What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John. This week, we are back with episode 93, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC Norfolk card going down this Saturday, February 29th, 2020, with the first of the 12 fights starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. This event will take place in Norfolk, Virginia. 12 fights, all on ESPN+. Prelims start at 5 p.m. Eastern, with the main card starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. And it is headlined by a vacant flyweight championship title fight between Joseph Benavidez and Davison Figueiredo. I cannot wait for this fight. It's one of the best fights in MMA you can make right now. And we got a pretty decent card to go along with it, with some fun matchups. A lot of less memorable names on the card, a lot of debuting fighters, but I still think we're in for a good night of fights. And I mean, the first fight of the night is a great fight, so we'll start right there in the welterweight division. We have Ismail Naurdiev, who is 19-3, taking on Sean Brady, who is 11-0. The opening betting line for this one was Naurdiev, the minus 150 favorite, to Brady plus 120. Right now we are seeing Naurdiev minus 125, Brady plus 105. So more action coming in on Brady, although there is two-way action on this fight. Really close fight. I think the early action came in on Naurdiev, and then he's been since then. The action's been coming in on Sean Brady, and I agree with the action coming in on Sean Brady. I think that this is such a close fight. If you're getting plus money on either side, it might be a good bet after all things are said and done. And I just think that this is a good matchup for Brady because the striking in this fight should be pretty close. I mean, I think that Naurdiev is the better overall striker. He throws kicks and knees better. He has good spinning back kicks. But Brady is just a better boxer. He has better defense, better power, and he's thrown and better combinations, I think, in the boxing department. So I think this fight is going to be a battle of ranges. Naurdiev's going to try to keep it at kicking distance, and Brady's going to try to get in the pocket and try to box. And Naurdiev is known to hit takedowns. He also has really good takedown defense. Brady has very good takedown defense as well. Really strong guy, low center of gravity, good base, good digging underhooks and stuff and takedowns. And Brady really upped his output in his debut decision win over Court McGee. But I mean, that fight was pretty close. He round 3 he lost pretty clearly, and even round 2 was a close round. But I mean, Brady really improved his output from his CFFC fights. I thought he threw a lot more strikes that fight, and he definitely slowed down a little bit in the third, but Naurdiev tends to slow in the third as well. So I'm slightly leaning Brady in this fight. I just think that he will be the more effective striker. I think the fight will take place in boxing range most of the time, and I just think that Brady will be the better boxer there. I'm interested to see how the level changes go in this fight. Both guys can hit offensive takedowns. Both are good at defending them, so I think it's more likely to stay on the feet, where I'm going to pick Brady to edge these rounds by landing the more effective punches on the feet. So the pick is going to be Brady by decision, but it's not a confident pick, and I probably won't even bet this fight, despite thinking that Brady wins at plus 105. But it's just too close to pick between the two right now and to bet. So the pick is a Brady decision. The next fight is in the featherweight division. We have Erlon Cruz, who is 8-2, taking on Spike Carlyle, who is 8-1. The opening line for this one was Cruz, the favorite, at minus 130 to Carlyle plus 100. Right now we are seeing Cruz minus 185, Carlyle plus 160. So way more action coming in on Cruz. I agree with the line movement here. Carlyle's coming in on a short notice, and Cruz is coming off of a very impressive knockout win on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. Really impressive what I saw from Cruz. He's an orthodox striker, really tall and long. He switches stances and throws really good strikes from both stances, throws a lot of front kicks. And what I love about his striking style is that he throws like everything at 70% power. He doesn't throw too hard, and that's why he was able to knock out Steve Nguyen, or whatever the guy's name was, in the third round of that fight, because he doesn't throw too much power. He doesn't tire himself out, and he attempted well over 300 strikes in that fight, and he was still able to knock Nguyen out in the last minute of that fight. Just a crazy performance in that fight. And then in his fight against Gui Curry as well, he was taken down early in that one, but used a butterfly sweep to get back up to his feet, and then started stuffing takedowns, ended up on top, hitting his own takedowns and out grappling Curry in that as that fight went on. So he's got the ability to stuff takedowns, stay off his back, get off of his back if he gets taken down. And moving over to Carlyle here, he is kind of a confusing fighter. Not much footage of him out there, but he came out really aggressive versus Colquhoun, was working super hard for a takedown. He was getting stuffed. He eventually hit a sloppy judo throw, but he couldn't keep top position. I mean, he was going hard for these takedowns, and he was failing. It looked like he was about to lose this fight, and then he hits a spinning back fist out of nowhere and knocks this guy out cold. It was one of the luckiest wins I've ever seen in MMA. It was so random and out of nowhere. I mean, Carlisle's striking is not good. His takedowns don't look good. His top position doesn't look good, and it seems like Carlisle, or maybe round submission one, would be his own only path to victory. I just don't. Maybe he'll tire Cruz out and get a submission later in the fight, but I mean, I don't see Cruz getting tired. I mean, like I said, he had an extremely high output in that fight, high intensity fight on the Contender Series, and then I mean, Carlisle doesn't have much experience going to the decision. Most of his wins are by submission, and it's over pretty lower level competition. And I mean, I'm pretty impressed with Cruz as well. I mean, he even has a victory over Steve Garcia, who we're going to talk about later, a choke over him earlier in 2018. So I think that Cruz will likely win this fight. I think that he keeps the fight standing. He stuffs takedowns. He gets off of his back and outstrikes Carlisle at a pretty wide margin. I mean, I give a huge advantage to Cruz on the feet in this one, and think that he will probably knock Carlisle out if Carlisle is not able to get this fight down to the floor quickly. So the pick is going to be Cruz round 2 knockout, and honestly at minus 185, I think there's probably some value left on Cruz, because I would give Carlisle's chances of winning this fight around 20 to 25%. So I would cap Cruz closer to minus 300, minus 350. So there is definitely some value in minus 185. But two debuting fighters, it's hard to lay that chalk, but I still think that Cruz is a pretty safe bet. The next fight is in the featherweight division. We have TJ Brown, who is 14-6, taking on Jordan Griffin, who is 17-7. The opening betting line for this one was Griffin, the favorite, at minus 210 to Brown plus 170. Right now we are seeing Griffin minus 130, Brown plus 110. So much more action coming in on TJ Brown in this one. And I totally agree with it. I mean, this is going to be a great fight, and I definitely agree with that line movement coming in on TJ Brown. Anybody who got Brown at plus 150 or above, that's a great price, and I honestly think the bets will cash. I am picking TJ Brown to win this fight, and it's a tough pick because Jordan Griffin is a good defensive grappler. He had a great fight with Dan Ige where he was hard to hold down. He got taken down in that fight and was able to get back up to his feet. Maybe even won round 2 versus Ige, but then was just grinded out in rounds 1 and 3 by Ige. But I mean, that's not a bad loss at all. I mean, Ige is really one of the best featherweights in the division right now. He's gotten so much better fight to fight, and there's no shame in that loss. But Griffin's loss to Chas Skelly, man, that is not a good loss. I mean, Skelly in 2019 is just not the same fighter he once was, and he should be, most high-level flyweights should take care of Skelly pretty easily, but Griffin had real trouble and lost that fight, was getting taken down, got his back taken in all 3 rounds, really struggled escaping. So I just think that seeing that Chas Skelly able to outgrapple Griffin is just not a good sign, and I think TJ Brown likely does the same thing here. And on the feet in this one, it should be pretty even between the two. I think Brown hits a little harder, but Griffin is also pretty tricky on the feet. I mean, I believe he's a southpaw. He was hitting some Dan Ige with some hard strikes in their fight, and I think that this fight should be really even on the feet, but on the ground is where we're going to see a big difference. Brown is really relentless with his takedowns, and he's a really good positional grappler. He loves top position. He keeps top position. He has good submissions. He has good guard passing, really good understanding of position, and I think that that's going to be a key factor in this fight because Griffin's going to be exploding. He's going to be trying to scramble back up to his feet, but I just think that Brown is going to be one step ahead in the grappling and likely keeps Griffin on the mat and wins these rounds from top position. So I'm picking the better positional grappler, in which I believe to be TJ Brown, and I think his cardio really impressed me in his Tuesday Night Contender Series fight, getting the 3rd round submission in that fight. He's comfortable going the full 15 minutes with some hard grappling, and Griffin's going to be in this fight. It's going to be a close fight, but I just think that we're going to see Brown on top position more. Maybe Griffin surprises me and is able to scramble back up to his feet and outstrike Brown on the feet, but I'm picking Brown in this one and think that he will win this one by decision. So the pick is going to be Brown by decision, and we have 2 units on him at plus 124, which is our first official bet of the day, and more to come later. And the next fight is in the heavyweight division. We have Marcin Tybura, who is 17-6, taking on Sergey Spivak, who is 10-1. The opening betting line for this one was Tybura, the favorite, at minus 115. Spivak, the favorite, at minus 115. A pick'em fight, and right now we are seeing the odds at Spivak minus 120, Tybura plus 100. So slight favorite for Spivak now. There's definitely two-way action coming in on this fight. Starting things off with just Tybura has looked really bad lately. I think he's looked like a shell of his former self. At one point, he was a pretty decent heavyweight. He gave Verdum a 5-round fight, was winning that fight versus Lewis before losing in the 3rd round. I mean, he's had trouble giving fights away at the end there, like versus Lewis, and you know, his past 2 fights have been terrible. I mean, versus Shamil Abdurakhimov, he looked really bad. He got outboxed in that fight. He looked like physically sick in that fight. I remember watching that fight and watching Tybura walk into the octagon. I think I bet on Shamil because he was sweating and was like swollen in the face. And I don't know if there was an official excuse for that fight, but I mean, his next fight versus Sakai, even worse, gets knocked out in 60 seconds by Augusto Sakai, and he just does not look the same. He can't take a shot anymore. His athleticism is bad. And I've also noticed a trend in him gaining weight. He has gained weight over and over again for his past 2 fights. If we look at his what he weighed in at over at Tapology, it gives you the weigh-ins for his most recent fights. Stefan Struve, he weighed 246, Shamil 249, and then Sakai 257. So he's been steadily gaining weight his past few fights, and I just do not think that's a good sign at heavyweight. And Spivak, on the other hand, speaking of that same trend of weight, he came in on a short notice opportunity versus Walt Harris. He got knocked out in 50 seconds. It was not a good performance from him. He weighed 254.5 in that fight, and his next fight, his win over Tai Tuivasa, he dropped 21.5 pounds. He weighed in at 233 pounds versus Tuivasa, so he definitely just got caught off guard, got signed to a short notice fight, wasn't in good shape, got knocked out. Next fight, took it real seriously, dieted down, came in great shape, and put on an amazing performance versus Tai Tuivasa. I mean, the level of skill at heavyweight is low. I talk about that frequently on the podcast, but for a heavyweight performance, man, I think that Spivak was tremendous versus Tuivasa. I mean, he knew that Tuivasa has a huge weakness on the ground. He was relentless with takedowns, hit 7 takedowns in 7 minutes versus Tuivasa, was doing all different types of takedowns, lower body, judo throws, trips. I mean, I was really impressed with his arsenal of takedowns, and eventually smashed Tuivasa on the ground and getting that head and arm choke in round 2. So I just think that Spivak is the much more physically fit fighter at this point. He's still got a long career ahead of him. Only 1 loss in the UFC. It was a quick knockout versus Walt Harris. I think Harris would dust Tybura just as easily if they fought. And I think that Spivak has the much higher ceiling. I've liked what I've seen from him lately. On the feet, I think that Tybura should have a slight advantage because he's more technical. But I mean, with just how bad he's looked lately and the slight, I've seen a decent enough technique from Spivak to think that he will be competitive on the feet in this one, possibly even win the feet, and then will likely hit takedowns on Tybura. And I'm just basically picking Spivak in this fight based on the fact that he's the more athletic fighter and the fact that Tybura has looked terrible lately. So I think that it's a bit of a variable pick. I mean, a lot of shit could happen in this fight to change things up real quick. It is heavyweight for all. So Spivak round 2 submission is the pick in this one, but in terms of a bet, I'm not rushing to bet Spivak, although I would like to see how Shamil looks in the weigh-ins. I mean, if he weighs in heavy again, gaining more weight, weighs in at 265, the limit, that's a clear sign that Tybura is not healthy, and I will look to bet Spivak at that point. But as of right now, no bet, but even though I think that there will be some value on Spivak minus 120. The next fight takes place in the middleweight division. We have Brendan Allen, who is 13-3, taking on Tom Breese, who is 11-1. The opening betting line for this one was Allen, the minus 140 favorite, to Breese plus 110. Right now, the line has flipped. We are now seeing Breese minus 135 to Allen plus 115. So, needless to say, more action coming in on the dog. Breese in this one, pushing him to the favorite, as he rightfully should be. I think that this is a winnable fight for Brendan Allen, but I think that he definitely should be the dog in this one. And I think that he will need a lot of things to go right for him. I think he needs early takedowns, and I mean, he would need to get some really dominant positions on Breese to win this fight, because on the feet in this one, I give a pretty big advantage to Breese in this one. He is a southpaw striker. He's got really good boxing. I mean, some of the best boxing I've seen in the UFC. I mean, he has not fought lately. He's got some anxiety issues where he's been pulling out of his most recent fights, and then that's a big factor in this. The fight might not even happen. He pulled out of, I think, his past 2 fights, like maybe after he weighed in. So hopefully this fight happens, and if Breese gets to the cage on Saturday night, I'd say that he wins the fight. I don't think it'll affect him in the fight. I mean, everyone gets nervous before their fights, but I mean, he's got some crippling anxiety. Apparently he's doing better with it though, and he's ready to fight. So I think Breeze's, jiu-jitsu is really nice. He competes in high-level jiu-jitsu matches against guys who compete in jiu-jitsu full-time, hold his own against them. We haven't really seen this jiu-jitsu much in the UFC, but, I mean, from those clips of the jiu-jitsu from EBI and stuff like that, that he's got really good jiu-jitsu, and that, Allen looked great in his last fight. I mean, it was more so Holland looking bad, I think, that, like, Holland just... I don't know. He might have gassed out in that fight, but I mean, he had good cardio in his previous fights, good defensive grappling, and it just wasn't there that fight. And Brendan Allen pretty much smushed Holland on the ground and ended up getting a round 2 submission via rear naked choke. It was a good performance, but I still think that we saw some weaknesses from him in that one. I mean, he got his back taken at some points. He got reversed by Holland, and I just think his grappling is a little too sloppy for Breese, and I think that Breese will get back up to his feet, not be put in any bad positions on the ground, and I think once it gets on the feet, we should see Breese running away with this fight with his southpaw striking, outboxing Brendan Allen. So I think that the striking differential is pretty big in this one for Breese. The ground is pretty close. We're going to see Allen looking to get this fight to the floor pretty desperately, but I do not think he has success, and I think that we see Breese win this decision. So that's going to be the pick for the fight, and Breese at minus 135, I believe there is some value there. I would cap him closer to minus 150, minus 170 range. You could even go honestly higher if we had seen a little bit more of him in the octagon, but I still think he puts on a good performance and gets the win. The next fight takes place in the bantamweight division. We have Gabriel Silva, who is 8-1, taking on Silva-Phillips, who is 6-1. The opening betting line for this one was Silva minus 175, Phillips plus 145. Right now we are seeing the line flip, Silva minus 120 to Phillips plus 100. So some varying opening lines here. Apparently he opened Silva opened minus 175 on Bet Online and plus 155 on 5 Dimes. So a little bit of a contrast there, but right now we are seeing some two-way action on the fight though, and a little more action on Silva's way. Actually pretty surprised at where this line is sitting at. I think that Silva should be a pretty sizable favorite in this one. I favor him in this matchup. I mean, not much footage on either guy. I will say that is we didn't know much about Silva coming into the UFC. He had that one fight against Ray Borg where he looked really good for the first 70 minutes of the fight. Eventually gassed out and lost rounds 2 and 3 of that fight for a decision. But round 1 he looked great. He got takedowns on Borg, had a top control on Borg, and won round 1 in the grappling versus Borg, which is just a tremendous accomplishment. And on the feet, his striking looks pretty decent as well. Phillips, he's more of a striker. He has good in and out movement. He fights from the orthodox stance. He has a spinning back kick knockout in his last fight. It was a crazy combination. He rocked his opponent with a spinning back kick and then finished him off with a head kick. He's got some knockouts from some Travis Brown elbows recently when he was defending a takedown, and his most recent loss was to Brad Katona on the Ultimate Fighter. He was calf kicked a lot in that show, got taken down, got pushed against the cage a lot, and got out grappled and really outstruck by Katona as well. So on the feet in this one, it should be pretty close, just on the fact that there's not much footage of either guy striking, and I think that I will actually give the edge to Phillips in this one. Phillips will definitely have the better kicks. I expect Silva maybe to have the better boxing of the two. But on the ground, I give this a heavy advantage to Silva. And Silva just attempts a lot of takedowns. I mean, that's his style, is he likes going for takedowns. And I can pretty much rely on him to hit takedowns in this fight because that's just how he fights consistently. So I think that Silva will hit takedowns in this fight. He will out-grapple Phillips in this one, or likely banking rounds 1 and 2. And it's a bad pick considering that Silva had a bit of trouble with his cardio last fight. But I'm relying on Silva to have some improved cardio here. And I think that he will likely win this fight. One of the biggest factors in this fight is that Phillips has good glimpses of power on the feet. He has good, striking where he can knock you out. But besides that, he does not have a consistent offense. He doesn't have the style where he can bank minutes and win rounds or hit takedowns or anything like that. He just doesn't have a good style for winning a decision. So outside of a knockout on the feet, I give this one pretty heavily an advantage to Silva. I think he hits takedowns here and out grapples Phillips and wins this one by decision, possibly even submission for Silva. So the pick is Silva, and I have a 2-unit bet on him at -120. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Luis Pena, who is 7-2, taking on Steve Garcia Jr., who is 11-3. The opening betting line for this one was Pena -330 to Garcia +270. Right now we are seeing Pena -295 to Garcia +235. So I was pretty surprised by this opening line. I think it should definitely be a lot closer. I mean, Pena does have a few things going for him in this one. Garcia is making his UFC debut. That's an advantage for Pena. Pena has also fought the full 15 minutes very frequently in the UFC. Fought against some pretty good competition. He dropped his last fight, though, to Matt Frevola, although he probably should have won that fight. He won round 2 dominantly, won round 3 slightly, but unfortunately he just let the fight get too close in rounds 1 and 3 and let Frevola win that decision. Sort of a similar thing happened with Trizano, where he was winning some of that fight, but eventually just lost pivotal moments and lost a split decision there. He did pick up a decision victory over Steven Peterson in a dominating finish of Matt Wyman in between those two losses. But I do think that Pena is slightly the better overall fighter. But I mean, Garcia is legit. I mean, I think these guys are neck and neck in pretty much every area of the fight. And Garcia is coming off of a TKO of Mariscal and Kambache. He's coming off of a TKO win on the Contender Series. He just has a problem making weight. He tried fighting at 135, and as a 6-foot guy, I mean, that's crazy. He's a thick guy, and I mean, he missed weight in the Contender Series. That's why he didn't get signed. He took his next fight at featherweight last fight, and he missed weight for that too, so not a good sign. But he was in the cage 6 weeks ago. He's got to, definitely be confident in himself. He's very active. He's got 4 wins in the past year and a half or something like that. So I really like what I've seen from Garcia. I really love his striking style. I mean, he pressures you. He throws a lot of good straight punches, good front kicks. I mean, he uses his reach really well. And I think that on the feet, that Garcia is the more potent striker. His strikes have a little more power. And maybe it won't translate because he hits guys pretty hard at 35 and 45. Maybe it won't translate up to 55 because Pena will definitely be the bigger fighter in there. He's fought at 55 pretty regularly. Meanwhile, Garcia, this is his first fight at 55, so definitely expect Garcia to be a bit undersized. But I mean, these guys are tall, 6'3" versus 6 foot. And I think that everywhere this fight goes, as I mentioned, it will be close. I think the wrestling exchanges, the grappling exchanges will be really tight. Although Pena might have a slight advantage with him coming from a wrestling background, him training at ATT now, him having a good performance versus Frevola. So I think this will be a really close fight. And as long as Garcia is able to stay off his back, if this fight stays standing, I think that Garcia will have the better output, will have the more effective strikes that will sway the round. So I'm actually going to pick Garcia as the big underdog in this one, plus 235 he is right now. I think he wins a real close decision in this one. I mean, Pena has just a terrible habit of making all of his fights close, and I think that at 3-1, there's no way you can bet Pena in this spot. So I think the value is definitely on Garcia in this one. Have not bet it yet, but we'll probably end up with 1 unit on Steve Garcia, because I think that despite him taking this fight on short notice, despite him moving up a weight class, and despite him taking on an experienced UFC fighter, I think this is a good matchup for him, and he will win a split decision in this one. So the pick is Garcia by decision. The next fight is the first fight on the main card in the featherweight division. We have Grant Dawson, who is 14-1, taking on Darrick Minner, who is 24-10. The opening betting line for this one was Dawson, the favorite, at minus 405 to Minner plus 285. Right now we are seeing Dawson minus 470 to Minner plus 375. So short notice replacement fight for Minner in this one. I think Dawson was supposed to take on Chas Skelly, but that fight was canceled. Minner is coming off of a Contender Series loss to Herbert Burns in his last fight, and really frustrating performance from him. I mean, he was stuffing the takedowns of Burns. It was avoiding the guard pulls, looked to be winning the fight from top position, but then he just dove right into a triangle choke, and he got himself choked out. And then that wasn't actually his most recent fight. He's actually had 2 wins since then, but that was his fight on the Contender Series over the summer. That's where most fans are going to know him from. And I mean, I just have not seen good things from Minner, in my opinion. I just think that he primarily relies on grappling. And I just think that Dawson is the much better grappler. I mean, Dawson's grappling is really, really legit. I mean, I was impressed with the way he beat Trezano. Really impressed with the way he beat Trezano. He was getting outstruck in that fight by Trezano, but was still able to get the takedowns, mount Trezano, and then get the back for the rear naked choke. So I think on the feet in this one, it should be slightly close. I mean, I still favor Dawson, even though neither of their strikings are very good. Minner's striking is very sloppy as well. And I think that this fight eventually gets to the floor. Dawson probably hits takedowns, smashes Minner from top position, probably passes his guard, mounts him, and gets a choke of his own. And I just think that the ground discrepancy between the two is just too big to think that Minner has a chance in this one. So the pick is going to be Dawson to get the submission or TKO in round 2. I just think he gets top position, could pound Minner out, or could get the sub. So the pick is Dawson. I think he wears on him and eventually gets that finish in round 2. So the pick is Dawson. I understand the action coming on him now. It's probably dog or pass where it's at. I just think there's no more value on Dawson, even though I'm sure people will be throwing him in parlays and all types of stuff like that. So the pick is Dawson by round 2 submission. The next fight takes place in the women's featherweight division. We have Megan Anderson, who is 9-4, taking on Naurdiev-Dumont, who is 4-0. The opening betting line for this one was Anderson minus 400 to Dumont plus 300. Right now we are seeing Anderson minus 230 to Dumont plus 190. Definitely the rightful action coming in on Dumont at plus 300. Hard fight to predict, honestly, because there's so little footage of Dumont out there. When I mean little, I mean there's one video of her fight, and she was fighting an 0-2 opponent. Looked like she had some decent kickboxing technique. She landed some takedowns, a little bit sloppy, but some nice body lock takedowns. Mounted her opponent, landed ground and pound, and eventually took her back for a rear naked choke. But there's also one clip of her out there landing a really nice judo throw from Shuto Brazil from her decision victory over, let me see this woman's name, over Marina Moraes. So she is 4-0. The women that she has beaten are not very good. They don't have much experience, but she's won 2 decisions and 2 fights by rear naked choke. So it seems like grappling is her primary base, and we know Megan Anderson. She's fought in the UFC a few times before, fought over in Invicta, and she's a pretty linear fighter. You know, she tends to keep the fight standing. She wants to keep it striking and land her big right hands. She does have some pretty decent striking techniques. She's got good power for the weight class. She really roughed up Charmaine Tweet on the feet and got a TKO finish. And then her fight against Felicia Spencer, though, bad performance. I mean, she came out, hit Spencer with a few right hands, got taken down, got her back taken, and got tapped out in 3 minutes. And she bounced back with a nice performance over Zara Fernando Santos in her last fight. Got a takedown, mounted her, and even got a triangle on Zarin in that fight. So it was a pretty weird finish. You wouldn't expect Anderson to get a submission victory, especially a triangle when she was getting bumped off a mount. But I mean, that just shows how bad Fern Dos Santos' grappling is, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. That'll come into play in the co-main event, but just so hard fight to predict, as I mentioned, because there's so little footage, but just basing off the fact that I've seen that one fight of Dumont, seeing that her style seems to be jiu-jitsu. There's footage of her competing in jiu-jitsu competitions from a few months ago, so jiu-jitsu is definitely her base, and with how weak Anderson's grappling game is, I mean, that plus 185 is tempting, because Anderson is kind of a mental midget. She does not like getting taken down. She does not I don't know. I see a lot of people out there questioning, her mentality towards fighting. She tends to rely on that early finish, and you never really know how good her cardio is going to be going into late in the fight. She got taken down and out-grappled by Holly Holm in her UFC debut, so Anderson's got a lot of weaknesses, and there's no way you can bet Anderson as a favorite in this fight. Anybody who's got a bet on Anderson money line, I mean, seriously, that's a sweat even before the fight even started, because I mean, one takedown and the bet could be wrapped up. So I mean, Dumont is the clear value side in this fight. Anybody who jumped in on her plus 300, plus 200, incredible bet. I think even at plus 185, there's a good bet. I mean, you might want to bet some Dumont submission, but I honestly think Dumont could win this fight via decision, submission. I don't think either of them will get a knockout. Maybe Anderson will if she can keep this fight standing, and there might be a bigger discrepancy on the feet than we can see. But Dumont's striking technique is good enough that I think that she can hang on the feet and not get totally wiped out by Anderson, and I think that she is the better grappler and will likely look to hit takedowns, get top position, and look to submit Anderson on the floor. So I think that the value is on Dumont, and I'm actually going to pick Dumont to win this fight, despite having that very little footage of her. I just think that Anderson has got too many holes in her game, and I think that Dumont likely surprises us and shows up ready to perform in this fight and gets the victory. I'm going to go with decision and picking Dumont here. No bet on her yet, but we'll likely look to bet her if she stays around this plus 150 area. The next fight is in the light heavyweight division. We have Ion Cutelaba, who is 15-4, taking on Magomed Ankalaev, who is 12-1. The opening betting line for this one was Ankalaev minus 400, Cutelaba plus 300. Right now we are seeing Ankalaev minus 220 to Cutelaba plus 180. So more action coming in on Ankalaev, more action coming in on Cutelaba, and that's the rightful side of things. I mean, plus 300 was definitely a little bit wide. It's light heavyweight. These guys are gonna probably trade on the feet. Cutelaba's got legit power, and I think that he has a window to win this fight. It's a small window. I think it's by round one knockout. I don't rate his chances too high, maybe around 20-25%. And after that, he has a steep cardio drop off. I don't see him winning 2 out of 3 rounds. Round 2, his cardio fell off big time versus Glover. He was hitting Glover with some big shots, rocking him in round 1, dropped him in round 1. But round 2 started feeling that cardio dump right away, was getting outstruck by Glover, was doing a great job stuffing the takedowns, actually. It went 7 for 7 stuffing takedowns versus Glover Teixeira, which is a good feather in the cap of Cutelaba, honestly. So he eventually got taken down throwing a kick, or just fell off balance throwing a kick, and the second he fell on his butt, you could tell that he was done mentally. Glover got on top, past his guard, mounted him, and choked him out for the finish. So Cutelaba's got major issues with his cardio, and he's kind of a front runner. Really all he does is just power strike for one round, and that's how he got Khalil Roundtree out of their last performance. But that was a sloppy performance from Roundtree. Just a sloppy from both guys. Cutelaba was so loose on the ground, like there was so much space in between him and Roundtree, and he was winding up these big ground and pound shots. And Roundtree just couldn't get up, couldn't create any space, just had no grappling technique, and was kind of wilting from the pressure of Cutelaba. Ankalaev won't do the same. Getting over to Ankalaev, I'm really impressed with this guy. A huge fan of him. I honestly think he's one of the best light heavyweights in the world right now. and would honestly probably pick him to beat John Jones straight up if they fought at any time soon. So, I mean, his striking technique is really, really good. I mean, for a big guy, I think he's probably got some of the best striking above 170 pounds. I mean, I'm talking all the middleweights, all the heavyweights, all the light heavyweights. He's southpaw. He throws good punches. He's got counter punching skills. Great boxing technique, extremely hard kicks. He's hard to take down. He has some reversals off the ground. I mean, Paul Craig took him down. He was able to reverse position and dominate that fight until he got tapped out in the last second. I mean, besides that last second triangle choke from Ankalaev, I mean, he's had nearly a perfect career. I mean, I was just watching his fight with Marcin Prachnio when he counter-punched him with the right hand, rocked him, and finished him off with the left kick. I mean, brutal finish. He's got precise striking, his accuracy, counter-punching. I mean, I'm a really big fan of Magomed Ankalaev, and I honestly think that he probably styles on Cutelaba here. I mean, on the feet, Cutelaba is going to be coming forward with heavy pressure, throwing bombs, but I think Ankalaev just has way too solid defense. He's been in the cage with tons of heavy hitters before, and he's dealt with them accordingly. And I think that he will likely do so here. I honestly think that Ankalaev likely finishes Cutelaba with a counter strike of some sort. Maybe he looks to take Cutelaba down, even though Cutelaba, I think that would be a bad strategy for him because Cutelaba's defensive grappling is getting actually a little bit better, as we saw versus Glover. So I think the best course of action for Ankalaev would be to keep the standing, avoid those big loopy power punches from Cutelaba, and look to outstrike him, counter punch him, and look to land his own knockout. But I mean, Cutelaba is dangerous for that first round. I mean, he throws spinning stuff. He throws crazy strikes from all angles. He's definitely dangerous in round one. And, I mean, a perfect way to play this fight, I believe, is bet Cutelaba round one knockout, which was at plus 800 over on FanDuel, which is through Betfair. They steal their odds through Betfair. FanDuel is a sportsbook available to some people in the United States. So, Cutelaba plus 800 on their first round knockout, and then Ankalaev money line at minus 220. That's a great way to play this fight because Ankalaev could win it by knockout, submission in any round. He could win by decision. Meanwhile, I think Cutelaba can only really win by knockout probably in the first 5 to 7 minutes. So the pick in this one is Ankalaev. I'm going to go with a second round knockout from him. I think he probably counter punches Cutelaba and puts him out. It's going to be a really fun fight while it lasts. Probably ends by knockout, and the pick for this one is going to be Ankalaev. And at minus 220, I do think there is some value on Ankalaev, and with that round one hedge as the TKO, I think that's a great way to play this fight. The next fight is the co-main event of the evening. In the women's featherweight division, we have Felicia Spencer, who is 7-1, taking on Zarah-Fairn dos Santos, who is 6-3. The opening betting line for this one was Spencer, the favorite, at minus 625 to Fairn at plus 450. Right now we are seeing Spencer minus 810 to Fairn plus 555. So massive favorite for Felicia Spencer in this one. Usually I say based on principle, women's MMA fights shouldn't be this much of a favorite, but this is a rare example where I think the line is justified. And I won't spend too much time in this fight because it's a pretty simple fight to break down. Zarah-Fairn made her UFC debut, got taken down, mounted, dominated, and eventually triangle choked by Megan Anderson in the first round in 4 minutes. Now, if Anderson was able to do that to her, and Felicia Spencer was able to take down, mount, and rear naked choke Anderson in 3 minutes, I mean, this is a pretty clear-cut example of where MMA math should work. I mean, Spencer's a black belt on the ground. She's 5 times as good as Anderson, and Anderson was 5 times as good as Fairn in that fight on the ground. So I'm expecting Spencer to be 5 levels ahead of Fairn on the ground. I mean, we're talking about a black belt versus a white belt here in this fight. And I mean, on the feet even, it should be pretty close. I mean, Spencer comes forward, she throws punches. She's from a Taekwondo background. She hung on the feet with Cyborg, ate some big shots. I mean, she was able to eat some massive punches from Cyborg. And Cyborg is one of the hardest hitters at 45, so I give Farron like a 0% chance of landing a knockout on the feet in this one. I give her a very, very low chance of stuffing takedowns, like a 5-10% chance of stuffing takedowns. And unless Spencer keeps this fight standing and tries to work on her kickboxing technique or something like that, I mean, I think that she dominates, gets the takedown, submits her in round 1. So, I mean, this is a clear-cut fight for Spencer. It's black belt versus white belt on the ground. I expect Spencer to take her down and submit her in, honestly, 90 seconds. So the pick is Spencer in this one. I think that Spencer at round 1 at plus money is a great bet. I hit that for 3 units at plus 125. Tweeted that out on my Twitter account. That implies that her chances are around, I think, 46%. I mean, I honestly think that Spencer's chances of a first round finish are around 60%. I think there's a 60% chance she submits her in 1, maybe 20% in round 2. If she doesn't finish her in round 2, she's probably not finishing in round 3, and then maybe a 20% of a decision. So, like, I mean, I honestly give Farron like a 5% chance to win this fight. It's just such a mismatch. And we're looking to get Spencer plus money at that round 1. Hopefully she comes out aggressive and gets this fight over with like she did against Anderson. My only worry is that this Farron will be such a little of a threat on the feet that Spencer decides to keep the fight standing just to work on her stand-up a little bit and keeps it striking. But Spencer, round 1, submission is the pick. And in the main event of the evening, for the vacant flyweight UFC championship, we have Joseph Benavidez, who is 28-5, taking on Deiveson Figueiredo, who is 17-1. The opening betting line for this one was Benavidez, the minus 165 favorite, to Figueiredo plus 135. Right now, we are seeing Benavidez minus 140 to Figueiredo plus 120. So the early action came in on Benavidez. He was hovering around minus 160. Then some major action came in on Deiveson Figueiredo around last Sunday, February 16th. Benavidez went from minus 150 to minus 125 in like one bet. So, I mean, some huge money must have been placed on Figueiredo in that fight. I mean, the action's been creeping in on both guys right now. I mean, earlier in the week, apparently Benavidez was back up to minus 125. He went to minus 115 at one point. And now we're seeing Benavidez back at minus 140. So a lot of action coming in on this fight. It's a two-way action type of fight. And there's a great reason. It's because this is one of the best fights that could ever take place in the UFC, honestly. I mean, these guys are so high level. The flyweights are so good. And both these guys are fighting at such a high level right now. I cannot wait for this fight. It's going to be so good. And Figueiredo is coming off of 2 nice wins. A decision victory where he outstruck Pantoja, who was hurting him bad in that fight, stuffing takedowns, avoiding the back takes. Tremendous performance versus Pantoja. That not so great of a performance against Elliott. Was kind of getting out volumed on the feet. It was a close striking battle on the feet. It was getting the leg kicked a lot before Tim Elliott just dove for a takedown and got guillotined by Deiveson Figueiredo in that one in round 1. So that's a bad sign for Figueiredo, is because he loves jumping that guillotine. I mean, in his fight versus Jared Brooks, he jumped guillotine 4 times. Jared Brooks popped his head out all 4 times. Figueiredo definitely lost that fight, lost rounds 1 and 2 of the fight, and I mean, Brooks should have gotten that decision, although it was a close fight overall. I had Brooks win in rounds 1 and 2 of that fight, but the judges in Brazil robbed him of it. Figueiredo got taken down a lot in that fight. He was going for guillotines, couldn't get off of his back, and just spent too much time on his back. Versus Brooks, who's a tremendous wrestler. His most recent loss was to Formiga when he was also taken down a few times in that fight. Struggled with the jiu-jitsu, the top control of Formiga, and was just not able to escape the bottom position from Formiga a few times in that fight. And Formiga won round 1 and 2 pretty easily, hitting takedowns in round 3, kind of just conceded a little bit, just backed up the entire round, and even one judge gave him that round. So Figueiredo is dangerous in rounds 1 and 2 on the feet. I think his power kind of drops off pretty heavily after that. And that's going to be his window to win this fight versus Benavidez. Figueiredo is going to try to have to win in rounds 1 and 2 by knockout. And he very well could. I mean, I think that one of the biggest factors in this fight is Benavidez' defense, and he has a bad tendency of leaping into combinations and leaving his head out there a little bit. He tends to leave with his head, leave his chin exposed, and it got him caught versus Sergio Pettis, and it's been a problem for him in the past. Got knocked out by Demetrius Johnson years back in his last title fight, but I mean, his striking is still so effective. He fights from the outside. He throws leaping combinations where he throws great leg kicks, hard body kicks, good punches. I mean, he rocked Figueiredo, or he rocked Formiga with a head kick and punches, and eventually knocked him out in round 2 of that fight. He knocked out Alex Perez in round 1. He had an amazing fight with Dustin Ortiz, back and forth grappling fight where he was able to get top position more in rounds 1 and 2, win that fight. Just a tremendous fight versus Dustin Ortiz. He has got the cardio to grapple for the full fight. He gets stronger as the fight goes. That Sergio Pettis fight, he dropped round 1, and then round 2 and 3 he came back strong. Most of the people scored rounds 2 and 3 for Benavidez in that one. And it was a close split decision. So, I mean, Joe's last loss comes against Sergio Pettis. It was a split decision loss. He was coming off a knee surgery, ACL surgery, first fight back from that. And the fight was razor thin. I mean, the total strikes were 87 to 86 for Pettis with 1 strike advantage. I mean, round 1, he got dropped. He came back well at the end of the round. He arguably won round 1 despite getting dropped. Round 2 was a bit of a closer round. Benavidez was coming real aggressive, going for takedowns. Got most of his takedowns stuffed in that fight. And then in round 3, abandoned the takedowns and was just pressing the striking and won round 3 on that fight. So it was a great performance from Benavidez despite him losing a close decision. And, I mean, getting down to the matchup in this one, I mean, like I said, Figueiredo's window to win is rounds 1 and 2, is when he has that power, when Benavidez is still getting settled into the fight, when his chin might be out there a little bit when he's throwing combinations. You don't want to let Joe Benavidez start timing you, start looking to hit takedowns, because if he starts hitting takedowns versus Figueiredo, he should run away with the fight. And one thing I will say about Benavidez' takedowns are when he chases them, when he has the objective of getting the takedown, he doesn't wrestle the best. He tends to get stuffed a little bit. He might telegraph his shots a little bit. But when he hits reactive takedowns, when he's striking with you and he ducks under and hits that level change, he's got some of the best timing and the best takedowns in the UFC. And that's how Formiga was able to take him down. He just waited till Davison swung big punches, big powerful combinations, and then would level change and get that takedown. So I think that's what Joe Benavidez will look to do here. He will look to take down Figueiredo early, get him frustrated, tire him out a little bit, take away some of that power, and then look to outstrike him later in the rounds. And I think if this fight gets out of round 2, the chances of Benavidez winning jump to about 80%. I just don't think Figueiredo will have the power to rock him, to knock him out in rounds 3, 4, and 5. And I don't think Figueiredo will be able to win the rounds in rounds 3, 4, and 5 because his volume and his power diminishes pretty significantly. So if Figueiredo does not get that knockout in rounds 1 and 2, I think that Benavidez runs away with the fight and wins the championship in this one. So getting down to how I exactly cap this fight, I think that Figueiredo's chances of winning in rounds 1 and 2 are around 27%, 25, 27%. I give him about a 10% chance to win a decision. So that's Figueiredo with 37% chance to win. I give Joe B a 63% chance to win. His most likely path to victory would be a finish in sometime rounds 2, 3, or 4. I give that around a 35% outcome, and then he has a 28% chance to win a decision. So I'm leaning Joe B in this one. I'm a big fan of Benavidez, big fan of Figueiredo, definitely a bigger fan of Benavidez. I mean, the guy's been in the UFC for so long. He's been at the top elite level for years now, and he's finally getting another chance at the UFC title. It would be a great story to see him win the title. I mean, I honestly think he's one of the best fighters in the UFC to never win a title. But, I mean, you cannot disrespect Deiveson Figueiredo. I mean, it could be his time. It very well could be. I mean, the guy's been improving a lot lately. He's been looking better fight to fight. I mean, that after that loss to Formiga, he bounced right back with probably his best overall performance against Pantoja, and he has a path to victory in this fight. I mean, the guy's got dynamite in his hands. He's got great upwards elbows. He throws elbows from range really well. He's hard to take down. He's hard to hold down. He's got incredible athleticism and durability and power. I mean, it's going to be an incredible fight between these two gentlemen. It's going to be technique versus power. Benavidez versus Figueiredo. I cannot wait for this fight. 5 rounds to claim the new flyweight champion. I think Benavidez is getting it done. I think my official prediction is going to be Benavidez to get that knockout in round 3. He's going to wear down Figueiredo. Figueiredo's power is going to disintegrate a little bit, and Benavidez is going to pick up the pace, and he's going to get that knockout just like he did versus Formiga once he starts to wilt. So that is my official prediction. Joe Benavidez, round 3 knockout. Was able to bet him at -125 for 3 units. Will likely look to hedge on, or have already hedged a bit on Deiveson Figueiredo by knockout at +450, because I believe that is his best path to victory here. It would be the knockout. So that is going to do it for this card. The official bets I have so far are 2 units on TJ Brown, 2 units on Gabriel Silva. We are 3 units on Spencer round 1, 3 units on Benavidez money line, and about 1 unit on Figueiredo knockout to hedge that Benavidez action. So we'll likely look to bet Tom Breeze later. Might bet Ankalaev money line, Cutelaba round 1. Might bet Dumont +190. So we'll look to add some more bets for this card, and I will update all of those bets on my Bet MMA tips page. I went 4 for 5 last week on picks with a 3-unit profit for the day, and it was a great card last week, and we'll look to make it another successful, profitable card this one. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 93 of the Martian MMA podcast, and I will see you all next week before UFC 248. Peace.